lives on the other side of the globe. At a time like that, our nation's leaders should be singularly focused on America's national agenda. Yet as senators and congressmen, we find ourselves spending more and more of our time raising money for our own elections and elections. That means we spend less and less time focusing on the issues that challenge our country. In the last 3 election cycles, Senate candidates spent nearly $1.3 billion on their campaign races. That amount and the growth of that amount is simply unsustainable. Unless you happen to be wealthy enough to finance your own campaign, candidates have little choice but to spend hour after weary hour dialing for dollars, shaking hands with strangers, and hoping that the money comes in. If you don't attend the nightly fundraisers and hit the phones during the power hours at your respective party headquarters, your campaign message just might be drowned out on election day if you're not careful. You'll stand little chance of being chosen to continue to work on the challenges you came to Washington to serve as you spend more and more time as a fundraiser. Worse, the system we currently use to finance federal campaigns makes candidates far too reliant on an elite group of people. Wealthy donors who many of them give of the kindness of their heart, but they're the ones that you spend a lot of time with. The result is a public who rightly questions whether those that win the elections in this system are serving everybody, all their constituents, not just the wealthy donors. Well, we need to finance campaigns differently. If we're going to bring real change to Washington, it starts with the way we fund our congressional campaigns. I'm introducing the Bipartisan Fair Elections Now Act today with my friend, Senator Arlen Specter. I'm pleased that Congressman Larson introduced a companion legislation in the House. Congressman Todd Platts of Pennsylvania, Walter Jones of North Carolina, and Shelley Pingree of New Hampshire. The fair elections, Maine. I just thought about that for a second. I'm sorry.
Close, but not.
I'm not sure a world of it. The Fair Elections Now Act would help restore public confidence in the election process by providing qualified candidates for Congress with grants, matching funds, and vouchers from a fund to replace campaign fundraising that largely relies on lobbyists and special interests. In return, participating candidates would agree to limit their campaign spending to the amounts raised from small dollar donors plus the amounts provided from the fund. Fair elections for the Senate have 3 stages. To participate, candidates first need to qualify to prove their viability by raising a minimum number and amount of small dollar qualifying contributions from in-state donors. Under this reform legislation, the maximum donation from a donor is $100. Once a candidate qualifies, the candidate must limit the amounts raised from each donor to that amount. For the primary, participants would receive a base grant that would vary in amount based on the population of their state. They also receive a 4-to-1 match for small dollar donations up to a defined matching cap. For the general election, qualified candidates receive an additional grant, further small dollar matching, and vouchers for purchasing television advertising. The candidate could continue to raise funds, but at $100 per donation per donor. Under our plan, candidates would really get out of the fundraising business and into the business of governing in much shorter and I think more effective campaigns. They'll be able to spend more time with their constituents and their families. They'll be in the policy business, not in the fundraising business. I might add that I think this would be a significant change in the way we do business, and it is not out of the question. Very similar programs already exist in Maine and Arizona, where the voters had the last word as to whether they wanted reform, and they said, we do. These programs are bringing new faces and new ideas in these states. Most importantly, candidates will be able to spend more time doing what they should do. Let me close by saying this. I believe that the overwhelming majority of men and women that I have served with and serve with today in the United States Congress are honest, dedicated, hard-working people. I'm not raising a question here with this reform legislation about that premise, but I do believe that if there's going to be real change, significant change, in the way we do business in Washington, it has to start with the way we finance our congressional campaigns. This has been a difficult bill to write. Every time we come up with a great idea, the Supreme Court comes up with a great idea. This time we stepped back and said, all right, it's totally voluntary. The amount of money that you qualify for has nothing to do with whether your opponent gets into the system or out of the system. So it really is a system of public financing. How is it funded is the obvious first question from the press. It's funded by a tax. It is a small tax, 1/2 of 1% on federal contractors, not to exceed $500,000 per contractor. That amount, I think, is a small token contribution from many organizations where the employees and others put in substantially more money into our current system. So I think it is a fair way to finance it. Let me turn it over to my colleague, co-sponsor, Senator Oldham.